Stewart is a visual artist. He paints in oils, and this evening he's going to paint a portrait of someone much younger than me, Summer, who's volunteered to be our subject. I've read a bit about Stewart, and I know some of you went to see his exhibition at the Palais de Vache recently. And he says on his blog, he champions the balance between innovation and preservation. And I think what that means is he's very forward-looking, but he doesn't want to forget the lessons of the past. Is that how you interpret it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, oh good. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello everybody. Hello. Right, so thank you for having me. So this evening we're going to try and do an Alla Prima portrait, so you appreciate it's not going to be a fully finished, it'll be the process. Try and get it as polished as we can, but it will still be a little bit rough and ready. Not too rough and ready, hopefully, but a little bit, because obviously I haven't got time to kind of sit there and finesse it to the nth degree. But I'll show you my process, how I go about doing this, because I have studio sessions quite regularly where I do this with other artists and they kind of come and paint together. So we'll set a model up, put a bit of light on and just paint for about 4 hours or so. And obviously tonight I've only got about 1 hour and however long it takes for having a break and chats and all the rest of it. About an hour and a half maybe. So, Summer, are you ready? Okay, so if I can get you to sort of maybe look up that way a little bit. See the little thing up on the round thing up there? That'd be perfect. I'm just going to pull that. Try it, yeah, just have a little look and see what it looks like. There we go. Is that all right, Summer? It's not in your eyes too much? Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's fine, yeah, perfect. Right, okay. So, I've put my palette up here just so you can kind of see the mixes as they go along. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. I'll talk you through the colours. So I've got 2 titanium whites. The left one I'm going to use probably for the dirtier colours, the darker colours. The lights will probably end up from the right-hand one, but more often than not, they'll all get messy, but we'll try and keep it clean. I've got a lemon yellow here, a cad red, raw sienna, a cerulean blue, which normally I have near the other blue, but I put it out wrong, so forgive that. I've got a cad red, liserine, ultramarine, and burnt umber. Okay, and that's roughly a standard palette for me. Sometimes I put like a Viridian or a Windsor green, or sometimes like a cad green as well. But tonight, I think we'll roll with what we've got, and we'll just see how we get on. In the dipper here, I've just got a little bit of Sansador, or Zestit. Actually, this is Zestit tonight. So Zestit being a more non-toxic thinning medium for brush cleaning and mixes and that kind of stuff. I don't use terps. I try and avoid it like the plague now. I don't use white spirits, and I try not to use too much of like varnishes and things within the painting as well, because it just hurts my lungs. I've got a bog standard canvas here, canvas board. I've just primed it with some grey. It's an old painting, but there's a little bit of texture down the bottom, but it's basically just a grey primer, so it's like white gesso, a little bit of black and white mixed into it. Nothing more complicated than that. Brushes. I've got a selection of brushes here, mostly hogs. There's a couple of synthetics, a couple of softer hair brushes, but mostly they're hogs. Okay, is what I'll be using tonight. Any questions on that? If not, I will crack on and get started. Appreciate I haven't got a microphone on me, so if I'm not speaking loud enough when I'm turned this way, just shout at me, okay? And if you want to ask any questions while I'm painting, please do. I don't mind questions as long as they're not, oh, that's crap. Or something to that effect. Okay, Summer, you ready? Let's have a go then. Right, so we're going to try and just do a very, well, not very quick, but a drawing, just to get the ball rolling. And then I will, obviously if I was doing this for myself in the studio, I'd probably take a little bit longer on this process, but I will try and speed it along a little bit. So I've got 4 dots there. That's basically just to break up the picture plane and to stop me plonking Summer's head right in the middle. Just so it's not like right in the centre of the picture, just so I get a little bit more of an interesting composition. Okay, cool. Right, so here we go. So I'm going to just figure out roughly where I want to place the head. So nothing too complicated. So I like the V of the neck there, so we'll try and get a little bit of that in. It's quite nice as a counter position to the hair. So we'll come over there, so we've got the hair coming up. Okay, then we're going to have your chin there somewhere. Bit of nose, that give you a nose, otherwise you won't be able to breathe. We'll give you some eyes somewhere in there. Bit of a forehead. So what I'm looking at here really when I'm doing this, obviously without too much faffing, is I'm trying to gauge roughly the proportions, say, between there and there, there and there, there and there. And usually on children's heads it's a little bit longer, sort of from here to the top, than it is on adults. Adults, generally it's roughly about halfway, but on children it's a little bit, or younger people I should say, sorry I don't know how old you are, but on younger people it's usually a little bit longer. So we'll just have a look at that. And then I'm just looking for shapes now. So I'm looking for where, say, for example, the shadow comes down the side of the head, where it meets the eyebrow, and that sort of shape that it leaves, that negative shape that left within the skin here, where, for example, the hair might cut in on the right-hand side. So that basic shape. I will be using left and right, by the way. So if I am standing in front, please just shout if you want to see. Oh, it's not too bad up there, actually, is it? You can see quite clearly. So that kind of comes down there. So we've got the eye socket. So no attempt at this point to worry about like eyes or anything like that. Just putting a rough shape where I think it goes. And we've got a little nice shadow shape that comes down the side of the nose and back up. And then that connects to the shadow on the side here up into the cheek. And then again we reconnect back to the big shadow coming down the left hand side. Okay. So that comes down to there roughly.
What colours are you using?
So at the moment I'm just kind of mixing together a little bit of blue-orange kind of combination to give us sort of a grey-orange with a little bit of, yeah, mainly orange and blue, but a tiny bit of cerulean, not cerulean, raw sienna as well now and again, just to break the colours up. So even at this very early stage of the painting, I like to kind of start to play a little bit with some colour, just to kind of make things interesting. So let's just get the basic shape in. So that comes down there, comes down the side of the head into there, and then we're coming down over the top lip almost, and then down into the chin, which is going to be in there. Okay, and then that connects into the neck, goes away and then back. So we're getting quite a strong sort of, not quite half, because obviously we've got a little bit of light on this left hand side of the face, but the majority of it is in shadow on this, what is I'm looking at left hand side. So I'm just going to roughly find that, and then I'm going to find the relationship now to the back of the head. So generally speaking, when I draw, I tend to oversize things a little bit, and then I kind of, as you sort of, almost like a block of clay, you kind of just chip away at it, and it gradually gets a little bit more kind of resolved. So I'm just taking a little bit of some slightly darker colours now, so ultramarine blue, and had a little bit of crimson in there as well. I'm just going to start to build a relationship now between the lighter elements and the darker elements. Because Summer's got lovely dark hair, it's quite a nice strong contrast that we can build into the face. comes down quite steep. Okay, and even at this early stage, I will be thinking about the background. So I'm going to take some kind of muted greyish colours, so a bit of ultramarine and a bit of brown, because that makes a lovely sort of, almost like a gunmetal grey, battleship grey type colour, or non-colour I should say. Maybe even a little bit more blue in there, just to carve the back of the head in a bit. And then this side of the face, back to my drawing with the hair. So we're just trying to find the connection between the hair and the face, which comes in there and then down. And then we've got a little tiny sliver of ear in there, not much. And then again back up, and then we're into the top of the head. Okay, block that in. I'm not worrying too much at this point about the changes in tone in the hair at the moment. Just want to get the shapes right. So the shape at the moment is sort of foremost in my mind. Comes down, all the way down, past the ear. So let's find your ear. A little bit more crimson, maybe in a touch of cad, into that same mix. So the ear is going to come almost the same level, maybe just tiny bit above the eyebrow. Put it in quite chromatic at the moment. We'll probably knock that back as we go through the painting. Back to my sort of dark hair colour. Change it up a little bit, go slightly brownier. So the paint at the moment I'm putting on is still very thin on purpose, because I don't want to get too thick too early, because otherwise it becomes very slippery and harder to manage on the surface. So let's just get this little area in here, which is quite nice. Stronger dark. Comes down the back. And obviously that might change as you get up and you have a break. So we won't worry about that at the moment. Block that in. And then we've got a nice connection then into the glasses. I'm assuming you're going to leave your glasses on somewhere, aren't you? You don't need to take them off, do you? Okay. So we'll pop the glasses in them. We'll make a start of them. So the glass is going to come across there somewhere. And then we've got this nice angle back towards the ear on either side. So let's change brushes and try and find one a little bit bigger. It's got a bit of orange in it, so we'll roll with that, see how we get on. Might be too orange. Let's now block in. Wow, that's orange. Let's break that down. Put a bit more cerulean in there. Bit of red. A little bit of raw sienna. So, just thinking about the cheek here. And the connection down into the neck. And then also because it's all nice and dark, I'm just going to block it all in. Go a bit bluer. So you can't see, but I'm like this half the time. So I'm really trying to condense down the kind of the information that I'm receiving to try not to fiddle and get bogged down into stuff too early. So really just trying to reduce the information. And then on this side, we need to carve in the face here. So if you notice, I haven't actually used any white just yet. Many of you paint with oils. Anybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
So a few of you. Okay. So with oil paints, obviously, because unlike say like watercolour, where the white of the paper is your light source, with an opaque medium like oils, we have white that we put in our mixes. The downside to white in the mixes is that all these lovely darks that I'm getting on, if I let white creep into those, they're going to milk up and they're going to get really difficult to get them dark enough. So I won't be able to get it as dark as Summer's actual hair colour. So I'm trying to just avoid using too much of those light colours at the moment. Obviously I'm lighting it with, say, a bit of orange or a bit of raw sienna, but they don't have too much white in them. Unlike, say, like the yellows or the actually I could probably do a green out. I'm going to put a bit of ruby in it. A Windsor green, because I can't get it quite dark enough. So we'll have a little bit of Windsor green. So otherwise it's going to be very warm, your hair. So I'm putting green out because I need to just cool the temperature in the reds. Because at the moment on my palette I didn't really have anything cool enough. That's better. To sort of knock some of the redness out of the paint. So that will allow me to do that. Because obviously green being the complementary, it will just help to temper that. Okay, so from the ear there, we're about here somewhere. Ear coming down, and then hair, hair, hair. The hair goes out that way, and then a bit more blue to do the other side, because it's not as dark. So the hair on this side, we come from the ear, we go out, down, and again away over the shoulder, somewhere like that. It's good enough for the moment. And then the other part of the hair will just come through somewhere there.
Just thinking it's quite good that your palette's in that position, but you're not looking down, are you?
Well, I found doing demos it's quite nice because then people can actually see
Yeah.
the actual mixes as they're happening.
Is that your normal practice?
No.
No.
Normally it's on a table. But it's quite nice here because then I haven't got the glare issue. Because I would imagine that if I put it flat, the window would cause a lot of glare on it. Yeah. Well, I'm quite fortunate. It is thin, but it's not so thin that it's kind of straight, flowing off the surface.
How are you organising your brushes? You've got 4 in your hand.
Guesswork and hope and pray. No. So I've got one that's very dark at the moment. Obviously, that one I'm using for those two mainly for darks. That one's got a little bit of lighter colour in it because I used it for the background, and that one I used to draw with. So.
And you managed to discipline yourself to use the right one.
Yeah, normally. Well, if you get the wrong one, you get the wrong mark. But normally, I'm quite happy with doing a whole painting with one brush. But I've got probably more brushes than I need here. But there's always that time where you just want that one particular mark, and if I don't have enough selection, then it gets a bit irritating. Right, okay, so let's now think about starting to pull this all together now. So I need a little bit more background, particularly on this side. And actually it goes, we've got a table kind of back there, so I don't want to go too warm, but I might add a little bit of oranginess to the grey. A bit too light. Let's go darker. It's a little bit too light. That might be alright. Let's pick some of that up as well. There we go. Wang some of that in there. If all else fails, just mix it on the surface. I used to be very, very cautious with my mixes and kind of try to mix everything on the palette and be very careful and all this sort of stuff. And then I just realised one day, what am I wasting my time for? I found that it's much, much easier just to actually mix a lot of it in situ. Particularly when you're working in this method, or if you do a lot of plein air painting, you just don't have the luxury of time to you know, make lots of lovely mixes and then kind of judge them and guess them and all the rest of it. You just have to kind of get on with it. Okay, so that's kind of blocked me in. I'm not going to worry too much about finessing the edges, but that's kind of blocked me in the head. So I will just give you some shoulders or a little bit of something down here just to sort of tie that in. Let's go slightly bluey, not ochre-y, raw sienna-y. Just want to pull, just making sure that I don't come too high. So this should be coming back that way. And a bit bluer. Get rid of that. Don't need that. Okay, cool. Right, so now let me think. Let's go with this one. A little trick, by the way, if you are an oil painter and you go to coffee shops, is never leave the coffee shop without taking your napkins. Because my mum taught me that. And I thought, why is she wandering off all those napkins? But it's because she used them for oil painting. And I thought, that's a good idea. So yeah, if you want some cheap stuff to wipe your... because you do go through a lot of kitchen roll with oil painting, because you must keep your brushes under control. And if they get out of, you know, they get mucky, then it's quite difficult to kind of pull it back. Let's go a little bit grayer. Okay, we might be able to live with that. So I'm just starting now to think about the connection between the neck and the face, and equally the way that that then interacts with the jumper. So we've got some of this sort of greeny greyish value, perhaps even a little bit warmer than that in the shadow. On this side of the face. And I'm just going to hold on a little bit to that. There's a tiny sliver of light, just to remind myself just to pop that in at some point. On this left hand jawline, Summer's right hand jawline, as we look at her. So now, the top of the head is a slightly different kind of quality to it. Generally speaking, the sort of forehead area is usually slightly yellowier then the kind of the sort of the middle area here tends to be a lot warmer, a lot reddier, orangier, yellowier. Men particularly, it's more greyish around the lower area. Probably to do with the capillaries in the face, and perhaps there's more, kind of blood vessels and all that sort of stuff. But okay, so enough talking about that. Right, let's pop in before I move on to lighter tones, let's pop in some value. So I'm not particularly worried about the colour, I just want it to have some tone to it. So this is a guess value which is probably not too bad actually, for that area in the eye. And then we just need to look at that shape. It probably needs to come over a tiny bit. And then we've got this lighter passage of value in here. So the other side of the nasal kind of column. So we'll link that into the eyebrow. And then in between, just going to bring this sort of bluer note. Not the skin is blue, but just as a change in temperature. Oops. And then below, just want a little bit more orange, quite warm on the edge of this shadow as it starts to come down the nose. Okay, and then we come down the nose, a little bit warmer again. And then back. And then we just fill that in. And then on the edge of that, I'm going to go a little bit bluer. Okay. And then we'll go down towards the mouth area. So the other thing obviously I'm trying to be very conscious of is this central line to the face. So as I'm sort of lining up my various areas, I'm just trying to be conscious that they are relatively aligned. Sam, are you okay? Don't need a break or anything? Okay. So there we go, it's a little bit of a connection there into the mouth. That comes down, and then we've got the angle of the chin, which is going to go that way. So you go a bit lighter on that. This is where the green will be quite helpful, because I can use it then to temper the ready version, the readier colours, and give me some more subtle grey notes. And then down into the neck, underneath the chin. And then I'm going to connect that into the face itself. So not worrying about, say, the boundary of the jaw and the neck, because ultimately if I squint at it, the value is pretty much identical, so I'm just going to bring the two together and then down. And then just fill that in. Just keep it a simple shape for the moment. So now we'll try and work our way up the side of the face. Going to come a little bit more chromatic. So by chromatic I mean a bit more colourful. I'm using a fairly whitish light here, so it is kind of knocking out some of the colour in the face. It's making it a little bit duller, but let's see how we get on. So we've got the cheek there somewhere. We've got some value on the nose. Then we've got some temperature up in the forehead. Across the top of the temple. Then I'm going to cool it down a little bit as we start to turn away from the light. So then we get a section of skin that's a little bit less colourful. Before the shadow. The hairline tends to be a little bit cooler as well. Take those colours up into the hairline. It's always good to make a connection between the skin and the hair, so you don't end up with like a trumpy kind of which wouldn't do you any good at all, Summer, if we did that. So we'll try and avoid that if we can.
Be more orange for that.
Yeah, you could be right. We're trying to avoid making it too trumpy. So now let's go a little bit more chromatic again, a bit more colourful. So I'm just going to pitch. So this is where the grey is really helpful. So remember I said at the beginning that the panel had a ground on it. And the purpose of that ground is so that I could do things like this, where I can pitch my lighter element and then I can pitch my darker element. If I was working on a white surface, then I would literally have had to cover the whole surface with something before that would show up. So that's the purpose of having a kind of a ground there, is just to sort of allow the value range to sort of be kind of established early on. So there we go. So we come down into this area. Now I'm going to drop to slightly smaller brush. This is a flat, it's a synthetic flat, just so I can control the shapes a little bit easier. So we're going to pop in a bit more of a darker value for where the eyebrow, or the start of the eyebrow shape will come. Not 100% where it is yet, but we're going to have a little stab at where it might come in. And it kind of tips off that side, and then this needs to come in a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to pop in again a warmish value down this left hand side of the head. So now I'm thinking more about structure than I am just shape. So at the beginning I was thinking purely shape. You know, what is the shape of the head? Is it oval? Is it square? Is it rectangular? are there sort of more triangular sort of shapes within the composition that I need to pay attention to? So that was kind of the starting sort of thought process. Now I'm kind of thinking, as well as that obviously, about the actual planes. So planes being the surfaces. Yeah, so when you want to create anything with form, you have to have a minimum of 3 values. Minimum. You can't do it with 2, because if you only do it with 2, you end up with a box. Yeah, so if you have like 1 value here, 1 value there, you get an edge. So it ends up like a box shape. So it's very hard to make things look curved. All right. So to make things look curved, you have to have 3 values. So 1 here, 1 in the middle, and then 1 on the side. And then you start to get that feeling of structure. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about here, is how can I start to turn the forms to start to give a sense of, you know, the fact that Summer's got a 3-dimensional head. She's not flat on a piece of paper like a photograph. So I need to think a little bit structurally about how I can try and capture some of that. So I'm going to get a little bit of a bluier note down this right hand side, because I see it a little bit cooler coming in there, and then it disappears down by the glasses. And then that tracks up and then into this side. And then we can bring the darker hair value a little bit lower. So I always said drawing sort of starts off a little bit bigger and then it kind of carves in. So that's sort of what's happening here, is I'm reducing some of these shapes, making them a bit smaller, finding them, losing them, restating some of them if they've got lost, trying to find the back of the head a little bit clearer. So, coming down now, let's pitch a guess. Colour eyes have you got? Sort of browny, aren't we? It's always good to find out what colour eyes your sitter has. It's no good you give them blue eyes if they've got brown eyes, they won't like you for it. So, coming down, thinking about roughly some placements. Not actually where the eye is, but just a guesswork of where some placeholders might go. So at this point in time, I'm not actually that bothered about trying to get an actual eye painted. It's almost just you want some marks just to work into, almost like placeholders, as I said. So then this shadow is, sorry, this eyebrow is going to come across and just get lost into that shadow. Let's lose that shape. Let's make that a bit stronger, a bit darker. So then the edge of the glass is going to come right about there, I think. Somewhere there. And the other one is going to come somewhere there. Let's grab another one of those. So I'm just going to pop in a little note of the ear on this side, because I see just a tiny sliver of it. So coming across, because that will just help to explain what's going on in that area. Okay. A bit more orange. Coming down. Okay, then while we're at it, let's just have a little look at this other ear. So it needs to come out a little bit and then back. Just to get the sort of the gist of the head direction. Then we come down and then we turn. So let's pop in the nice bit of dark again, just under here. Just to hold that shape in, and then curve back. Okay. Pull that ear in a little bit, it's a bit big. So then back to the glasses, or actually the shadow shape within the eye. A bit more raw sienna into the red. So the actual eye itself, there's no point me trying to paint an eye if I don't have all the relevant structures sort of in place. And normally if I were doing this as a portrait for myself, the eyes would sort of be the last thing I'd be thinking about at this point. I'd be concentrating a lot more about the shape of the structures in the socket. Because otherwise it's like trying to put a kitchen in before you built your house. Yeah? And then when you try and put the eye in, you're actually trying to put the spoons and the knives and everything in the drawers before you've even built the kitchen. Yeah? So you need to kind of make sure all the relevant structures are in place first before worrying about even looking at trying to get these things in. But because it's a demo, I'm going to but have a go at popping some of them in, just so we get a little bit more structure in the head. A bit more red in there. And that comes all the way down into that part. More blue. Sort of a lot of soft purples and greys and a lot of ambiguity in the values and the colours within the shadow area on this left-hand side, because everything's very close. There's not a lot of definition, so everything kind of just merges into one another. So now let's pop in. We'll have a little go at where I think the lighter portion of the skin is. We need to go a little bit slightly bluey. So crimson, so it's like a purple with a bit of yellow in it, to give a sort of less, kind of a little bit less chromatic skin tone. So obviously there are no one skin tone. I mean, it just depends on the type of light that's shining on it. Which always makes me laugh when I go into an art shop and they have flesh tone kind of on the shelf. And you think, well, I'm sure if you painted everybody with that same flesh tone, they would look a bit odd. So, just going to pop in a little bit of this shape there, and that carries on up into this sort of passage. So the light's hitting this and then continuing up, and then it carries on through, and then it goes a bit warmer into the top of the eyebrow. It's a little bit bluer. There we go. How am I doing for time, by the way? Am I alright?
About 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, right, okay. Sorry, I do lose track of time as I'm painting. So that's a bit too blue. Let's knock that down a bit. Probably a little bit better. So I'm just going to have a look at the shape of the edge of that shadow. And then we'll pop a little bit of, let's get some value down the nose. So coming off of the nasal ridge, we come down, then we hit the glasses, so we have to just, I'm going to paint through that and kind of ignore the glasses for the moment. It's always easier to get things lined up properly if you paint through them and then you kind of just re-establish them afterwards. It's always very difficult to make sure your alignment's correct if all your shapes are kind of broken up too quickly. So a little bit bluer there in the nose. Slightly greenier, I think, just in the rest of that shadow. Okay, and just before we break, let's just try and get a bit more information just in here. Because this kind of holds the structure of the nose into the top of the head, which is quite important to get in. And equally, the head is a little bit more full in this area. By full, I mean it's a little bit, there's more volume. So I'm just going to build that up a little bit and then just work that back into the existing. Okay, I'll do for the moment, we'll work on that in a bit. And then let's just pop in, and then we can let some have a break. Just a little bit of the top of the right hand side eye. Kind of comes out. And then down. On the inside, we come up and then in. Something like that. Okay, let's take a break. Any questions? No? Everybody alright? Thank you, Summer. Is that alright? You okay?
Yes, oh, after you.
Sorry. Just in case I do a bit more work.
Do you mind if I take a straight back? Because I can keep you down here and I can see you. And it's such a pretty face.
You'll have lots of paintings of you now. Do you paint yourself? You should. Okay, right, so how long have we got left? We've got about 30 minutes?
Yeah.
About 30. Yeah, so about 40-ish minutes, so yeah, okay. Yeah, was the other light on or was it off? I can't remember. Yeah, got it. So what I'm going to try and do now then is try and pull it sort of together a little bit more in the last sort of section. In the break, you may have noticed I kind of cleaned the palette off. I find it's always a good practice when I come back after having a bit of a break to clean the palette, because then that forces me to make good decisions again, rather than be lazy and just sort of pick up, you know, kind of mixes. It's quite a good habit, particularly when you're doing Alla Prima painting, because it's very easy to get lazy and just sort of pick up any old kind of paint you've got on the surface. When you think, oh, that's a bit pinkish, then you'll just make up, you know, a bit of a pink and hope for the best. Okay, so I'm just going to pop in some shapes now for this cheek. And then we'll try and put a little bit of value on the nose. Try and get the shape of the nose a little bit better. Coincidentally, when I'm normally painting in my own studio, I'm normally pacing backwards and forwards. So I'll do a few marks and then I'm over here and I've got a mirror and I look in the mirror and then I come back and I do a few more marks. So I'm rarely kind of standing at the easel like I am here. But I find that you have to have a very healthy distrust of your own decision making, because painting and drawing is it's very easy to kind of convince yourself that what you're doing is really good and that you're a brilliant artist and everyone's going to love your work and it's going to fly off the walls. But more often than not, you go away you come back the next day and you go, who the blinking heck painted that? You know, especially when you think it's your best piece of work, and then you come back the day later and it's like, what the hell's that? So I always have this kind of never make a decision whether I like something, hate something at the time I create it. I go out with a lot of plein air painters sometimes, and I sort of turn around after half an hour of painting and I've done something and they've already scraped it off and then started again, or they've kind of done something. So it's always a good habit, I find anyway, to sort of try to push whatever you've decided to do as far as you can, even to destruction, before you decide that you don't like it or not. And one of my tutors told me that once, is that never give up on a piece of work, because you're always only ever a few marks away from it being either very good or very bad. And there's no telling whether it's going to go either way, so you might as well just keep battling on until you get to a point where you think, no, I've got no more energy for it, and then you kind of then can give up. But if you've still got the energy, you ought to, you need to fight, and it is a fight. It's a battle. All painting is a battle. And if anybody tells you it's easy, then they're lying.
It's relaxing.
Yeah, and it's relaxing, yeah. That's always a favourite one, isn't it? You go out and you're plein air painting somewhere and you go, oh, isn't it lovely, isn't it? And there's you battling with the wind and the flies, and particularly around here with all the horses, you get attacked by the horses. And then you just have to smile and go, yeah, it's a lovely pastime. Give it a go sometime. Anyway, don't let me put you off going out painting, because it is a wonderful pursuit. It's just sometimes it can be a real battle. Okay, so I ought to concentrate here because I'm not really concentrating. But anyway, we need to get a little bit more value under the eye here, coming across, coming down, and then under the nose, and then down. So we've got the philtrum just under the nose line, and then we miss the lips, and then we're into the cheek, the chin. So we'll just pop a bit of colour on for the chin. So it's a little bit pinkier. in shape. That will be good enough for the moment, and then we go back to our darker reds, purpley colours. Bit of raw sienna in that, so it's actually a lot darker warms on this side. So I'm just going to try and get some of that in. The glasses are causing quite a bit of shadow under the eyes, which is nice, but it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie. There's a little bit of something there for the nose, wing of the nose. And a lot of these marks that I'm making at the moment are really kind of placeholders, for want of a better word. You know, if I had a lot more time, then they would become a little bit more fleshed out or fully resolved. But in this sort of Alla Prima-y kind of demo-y style that I have to work in, there's sort of, you see when I'm concentrating, I kind of go quiet because you have to think. It's very hard to kind of talk and concentrate at the same time. So they are sort of just pieces of paint that are breaking up some of these shapes. So a little bit of an indication of the eye fold on both sides. Not too much because don't want to overdo it. So I'm just putting a little bit of viridian-y green in there as well, just to sort of cool the temperature, but keep the value up. So the way that I paint is, I think, much more about the temperature and tone than I do the colour. For me, the colour is kind of secondary to the actual getting the value right. Because in the grand scheme of things, when you're trying to paint something that's got a lot of structure to it, like a face or I don't know, anything really that's very structured, there's a hierarchy in the kind of the way you need to think. So when you're trying to fix your problems, there's like a triangle. So at the bottom is like the drawing, so it's like the largest portion of the problem solving. The next part is tone, and then the next quarter, so the last part is colour. Because it doesn't matter what you do to the colour, it isn't going to fix the tone, unless you make it obviously dark or lighter. You can make it more chromatic, but that's not really going to do too much to the structure. So you've got to get the drawing right, then the tone, and then the colour can kind of sit on top, or the way I think anyway. Not necessarily the way everybody works, but that's kind of what's going on in my head to a degree. So bringing down the eyebrow a touch on this right side. It kind of comes up a little bit higher. And it's warmer on the left hand side. And there's a definite angle to it. So now I need to pop in the shadow that's being cast over the edge of the head on this side. So it kind of comes from the back into the face, in, down, and kind of connects to the eye. Let's make that a bit bluer. It's kind of the shadow. on the side there. Disappears into the hairline. Let's make that a little bit orangier. More red in there. Carve around the ear. And then back to my dark, just to get the glasses in. So the viridian and the crimson make a lovely strong dark. And they're actually intersecting. Were they lower down your nose before? Some. Were they lower down your nose, or did they feel about right as they were? Okay, it's fine. I'm not asking you to move them, I think when I drew them I must have put them too low. So it's actually intersecting the eyes. One there. Makes my life easier because I haven't got to put your whole eye in then. And then we come across the bridge. Too much white in it. And then that comes down side. Down the side of the nose. And then on this side we're coming down again the side of the nose. And again we cut through, making sure they line up. Slightly upper angle. And then the edge of it is going to be somewhere there. Somewhere there. Okay. So then we'll cut into that. With a bit of purple. So to make a bit of purple and put a bit of yellow in there. Just grey it slightly, give me sort of nice cool grey, bit of raw sienna in it as well, just to warm it a little bit. So I'm actually oversizing the mark of the glasses so I can carve them back. It's a bit easier than putting, a bit light there as well. It's a bit easier than putting a very fine mark down and then just holding it in place. So it's much, much warmer in this cheek. It's much redder. There. Bit more blue in it. So I use quite a lot of cerulean blue, but I don't use the expensive stuff. I use the cheapy Winton version because I find that it's a nicer. It's much nicer and it's a lot cheaper. So the equivalent sort of 200 ml tube in Winton is about 14 quid. If you bought that as an artist tube, you're looking at anywhere between 150 to 200 quid. So it's a lot cheaper to buy the Winton one, particularly in that colour. So that shadow connects into there. And it goes a bit more colourful through there, a bit redder, orangey. Okay. And then for the far side, it's going to go a bit greyer. Get this side of the cheek in, and then start to indicate the jawline. Remember I said right at the beginning that I was trying to hold on to a little bit of reflected light that's under here, so we'll just have a little stab at putting a touch of that in. There's a tiny bit of reflected light in there. So the key here with reflected lights is not to make it too bright. Not to overkey it. It's very easy when you look into lights. Sorry, look into darks rather.
Sorry.
Someone was going to break into song then. Little interlude. Yeah, it's very easy when you look into the darks and you get something light in it to make those lights really, really light. And conversely, if you look into the lights and then you get something a little bit darker in there, it's very easy to make those too dark because there's something called simultaneous contrast, which sounds very technical, but effectively, sorry, going offline again. Effectively, you've seen that checkerboard kind of illusion. You've seen the one with the grey square there and the white square there, and because the shadow's cast over the grey square, it looks like one's darker than the other, but effectively they're the same. Our eyes are so sensitive that when we shift even the same tone of a colour from one place to another, our eyes will make it feel like it's getting darker or lighter. So you have to be very careful about when you're looking at your lights and your darks, not to overkey them. And it's better sometimes to underplay them and then build them up than it is to go too strong too soon because of that fact. So we're just going to give it a little bit of a neck now. So under the chin here, and then come up. So if I go slightly bluier in the neck, and then carve it in just a tiny bit there, and then in the face a little bit more raw sienna. Oops. So then in the face we can come a teeny bit more warm. Carve it into that shape we had previously. Oops, it's a bit dirty. Clean that up. Better. Touch redder. Oh, blimey. See what I mean about keeping your brushes clean? Particularly when you're working in your lighter colours. Nothing to see here. There we go, look, we'll just get rid of that. Okay. So we're just slowly working my way into the softer area around the muzzle, at the top lip. Better give you some lips. I hate painting lips. I like noses, I like eyes, chins are okay. But lips are always trouble. They're always trouble. There's so many soft forms and shapes going on in there. It's always really tricky. But anyway, we'll have a go. So there's the nose, there is the centre. So we'll place a line there first. Make sure it's going in the right direction, obviously. So this side is marginally lower than the right side, marginally. And then we'll go a little bit more chromatic, more colourful, I should say, under the lip. Come across the bottom lip. Into the side. Then we've got a shadow which cuts in here. It goes a bit darker. That'll do for the moment, and then let's pop in the lower part of the lip. Okay, and then it comes out and then down. And then we will put in the slightly more colourful area. Comes forwards and then around. Back into the raw sienna. See what I mean about lips? They're just shape after shape after shape. Okay, I can kind of almost live with that. Let's just pop in a bit more. It's just a tiny bit more value. You can just pop in there. Okay, I'm not going to play with that, that's good enough. Okay, so now, the nose. Try and refine that a bit more. It's kind of a purplish note, perhaps a little dark, too dark. to try and do now is turn this form to make it feel a bit more voluminous. So I now need to get a piece of colour that I can half tone the shape with to start to get it to turn, if that makes sense. So that could go a bit redder actually. So here it could come a lot cleaner. Down into the lower part of the nose, where we're then back into shadow. It's quite a purpley shadow. And then we've got a nice warm nostril area somewhere there. And on this right hand side of the nose, it's quite pink. It's receiving a lot of light. Just clean it up a bit. Okay, that'll do for the nose for the moment. So now let's turn our attention back to the eyes very quickly. Yep. Just got time. So back to a bit brown, bit of the raw sienna, a little bit of the orange. So I need to try and find where they live within this space. So they're in here somewhere, we've just got to find them. So this one is kind of tucked right into the edge of the rim of the glass. And then it goes super dark down in there. And then there's a lovely highlight just pinging its way across the top. So let's just put a little bit of the lighter area of the lid in. So I don't know if you'll notice, but when I'm making this, I don't know if it's visible on the screen or not, I'm trying to make a sort of quite a refined mark. So this brush chisels up quite nicely. I don't know if you can see it up there. Can you see it? And by chisel I mean all of the hairs kind of come to a very, very crisp, clean edge. Can you see it? Not really. So when I lay the mark, I know exactly where it's going to go. That's why I don't really use filbert, because when you use a filbert and you make a mark, you're going to get a C shape. And when I want to make a sort of a definitive, say like a line or a statement, I need to know where the mark's going to go. So with something like this, it's much, much easier to know exactly where the mark is going to hit. And I've got a lovely little bit of glint just in there on that eye. And then there's a lovely highlight, and that's another little trick, is when you're going to do a highlight on an eye, rather than go for a tiny, tiny little brush, what I tend to do is dip the paint into a nice thick area, and then pull it out, and then you get a little tail on the end of the paint, and that's the thing you actually touch. You don't try and rely on the brush to do the work. I often find you can get a much finer, he says as he goes and messes it up. There you go, you get a much finer little dot of white than if you were to do it with a brush specifically. Okay, so there's another nice little bit of light that we can get in just there on that eye. Obviously needs a bit more refinement, but just for the purposes of this, I want to try and get the eyes in just so we've got some eyes. This side, the light comes down a little bit. Back to the dark brush. Slightly orangier. So tipping down this way. Okay, roughly lined up. That's always the biggest bugbear, is that you go and paint two beautiful eyes and neither of them are in relation to one another. That's always the biggest problem with portraiture, is you get so caught up in all the little shapes and the detail. It's very easy to forget that all the shapes have to kind of live with one another. Okay, anyway, so let's pop in another little highlight. So again, trying to line them up on the same side of the eye. There we go. If you put one side, one the other side, they look mad. So if you have one that side and one that side, it looks like they're looking out. If you do one on the inside, they look cross-eyed. So even if the light source is kind of coming from two different directions, often you're better off sticking them on the same side, just for clarity within the picture, within the painting. Okay, so let's just now try and turn a little bit more of the form in here. Very, very warm in this area. The brush is clean now. So probably what I would do at this stage, moving on into the next sort of modelling phase, is start to think about, are the shapes 100% correct? So like here, for example, the brow ridge and the relationship between that and the areas around it would need a little bit more finessing, a little bit more control, perhaps a bit more slower mark making. And all of those things go to getting the likeness. So I know that's something we haven't actually talked about this evening, but I never start off by, you never start the piece of work by actually trying to go for the likeness. It's a kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. If you try for it too early, you hold on to everything too much. So it's a case of trying to get all of your shapes and relationships in place as best you can, at which time then, if you feel confident, you can then go more for the likeness. But if I were to try and paint all of this in one sitting, worrying about the likeness too much, then I would never put any paint down. Because everything would kind of feel a little bit too inhibited. So there's a nice bit of grey. Just need to get in that eye. On that side. Maybe just a touch more of the pupil below the lens. Just to make it a little bit bigger. Same perhaps on this side, it's a bit more light actually in here. Didn't quite get first time round. Looking a bit skew-whiffy, but never mind. We'll have to roll with it at the moment. So now let's just push the hairline a little bit more. Because I'm very conscious that time is pushing on. So let's just try and get the rest of this glass frame in. Turns the corner just into the cheek about here, where we get a bit of an optical illusion because it kind of splits the face a little bit. And then on the other side, comes in about there. Don't actually need to paint the whole frame because by virtue of by virtue of the our brains, it kind of makes up a lot of the shape. So we don't need to, I don't need to overstate it. Going to put a few little highlights just in there, which will hopefully just indicate some of the shape a little bit better. This one's too wide, that one's too short, but never mind. I'm not going to worry about it now. We haven't got time to fix it. Just try and pull it to a resolution. So at least everywhere's got some paint on it. Much darker in there. This is the bit I quite enjoy, where I can kind of ad-lib a little bit. Once you get outside the face, you can have lots of fun. Just very quickly, I'll just give us some shoulders. Need a bit of shadow. Just in here. Okay, and then just finish off this little bit. Right, one last bit. Told you it's always a battle. Just too much cheek there, I think. I'm going to mess it up now, aren't I? Told you. Darker. There we go. Thank you, Summer. Wonderful model.
Perfect. Oh, thank you, Stewart, so much. A wonderful lesson in portraiture, form, colour and everything else. And I think we should apologise for making you do it in less than 2 hours
it's
when
fine.
Portrait Artist of the Year give you 4.
Wow. 4 over 6, yeah.
Yeah, close to that. Well,
Kind of.
thank you so much. And I've asked Stewart to be a self-publicist and just tell us a little bit about some of his workshops that he has on offer
Yeah.
down at Palais de
So I
Vache.
don't know if any, you may have been there, you may not have been there, but the Palais de Vache is just in Exbury Gardens, just past Exbury Gardens, down on the Rothschild estate at the end there. They've got this old barn that they've kind of converted into a big gallery, and there's also a workshop on the back of that I run workshops through. So if you're interested in any of that, then you can either take a card or take one of those yellow leaflets, and on there you'll see all the current workshops. There's a number of them that are already filled up, but it's a whole year's worth basically there. And there's not only my workshops, but there's another artist on there, and we're trying to bring in more sort of teachers to build it into a bit of an art school. So if you are interested in any of them, then go and have a look. And my exhibition's still on as well at the moment, so if you are interested and want to go and see that, there's still time to go and see that as well.
And you very kindly said you might do a plein air session if enough of us wanted to do it.
Yes, so if anybody wants to sort of do a day at the Palais doing some painting in the landscape, I can probably organise that. So if you are interested and want to do that, then I can let you know, and we can try and liaise to get that sorted.
Try and get that sorted, yeah, it'd be good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you to Summer, wherever you are. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Colin.
Summer.
Thank you for the coffee makers and everybody else. Brilliant.
There we
Lovely.
go.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.